Absolutely not. I think citations are not something you can manipulate. Whenever someone reaches out to me as a potential consulting client, they tell me they found me on ChatGPT or Gemini, I ask them for this specific prompt, and then I look at it and I see why the LLM recommended me, and it'll be a citation I never would have guessed. It'll be like some conference I spoke at in 17, and I have a bio and I mentioned the word that they looked at.
On today's episode, I speak with Eli Schwartz. Eli is a growth advisor and SEO strategy consultant. He's worked with some of the biggest names in tech, from Tinder, Coinbase, LinkedIn, and SurveyMonkey. Enjoy today's episode. I'm glad I finally got you on because
Yeah, thanks for pushing me. I'm sorry, I get too I saw it and then I get too picky. Like people email me and they're like, "Can you be on a show?" And I'm like, they have 23 listens, and like I really don't know if I want to dedicate an hour that no one's ever going to pay attention to.
Oh my gosh, so thank you. I feel very lucky you finally agreed and I wasn't too annoying. But yeah, I wanted to start with a bit about your history. So you were in SurveyMonkey back in 2012. You spent nearly 7 years there. You built up your organic search, from like less than 1% to where it is now. I mean, not now, but like during your tenure there. And I wanted to
It
ask what
wasn't
parts of
really
S.
it wasn't really 1%. What it was it well, finish your question actually, then you can cut it off.
No, I just wanted to ask actually, what was it? You can correct me. It's all good.
Okay. So what it was is I joined SurveyMonkey, and so SurveyMonkey was founded in 1999, and it was started as a tool. It had a great history. It started in a college dorm room in Wisconsin, and then they figured out they needed to be in the West Coast, and they had a bunch of customers. And the founders actually unplugged SurveyMonkey. It was in the dorm room on a server. They unplugged it and drove from Wisconsin to Portland, Oregon, where they reestablished the company. So they had never really done any marketing. And then, so 10 years after the company was started in this dorm room, it became a real company. It raised a bunch of private equity. They got a real CEO. They established a company. They started hiring marketers. So by the time I joined in 2012, they had decided to take digital marketing seriously. So my manager at the time was the first real digital marketer they had hired. He had come from Apple. He started building the pay team. And then the next leg of that stool was let's do SEO. So when I joined in 2012, it was a 13-year-old company that had insane brand recognition that had never, ever, ever done SEO. So I joined on my first day and they just dropped a bunch of SEO audits on my desk. And they're like, you can start here. In the past, we've, talked to these different people about SEO. One of them, shout out to Laura LePay. I don't know what Laura is doing right now, but I think her last job was at Comcast. They're like, here's Laura's SEO audit. It was fantastic. I'm like, why did you do this? Why'd you do an SEO audit and not do anything about it? They're like, well, we didn't have any bandwidth. So I joined this company that, again, had crazy brand recognition, backlinks, even at the time, from every single government, university, every website in the world you'd want a backlink from, and they'd never done SEO. So it's not that they had no SEO traffic. They had fantastic SEO traffic. Most of it was branded and all the rest of it was accidental. So there were 4 terms that I inherited that they were already ranking on and doing a great job of, or not even a great job. It's just they did. It was the word survey, surveys, the plural, online survey, and the plural of that online survey. So those were the 4 terms. So all the reporting was, here's how much SEO traffic we get from these 4 terms. And then I was able to build up a deliberate strategy. It was my first time. I'd been at startups before, first time really coming up and learning the soft skills part of SEO, which I think is so much more important than the hard skills part of SEO. So in the beginning of my book, I tell a story where it was like maybe my first couple days at SurveyMonkey, and I identified, I don't remember the exact problem, but it was like a 301, 302, something, best practices. Google says to do this, and identified like, wow, look, they have this amazing technical SEO problem, and I'm going to come in my first week and I'm going to be a wizard and I'm going to solve it. And then I'm going to be a hero. And I've really established my credibility and credentials as an SEO expert in this company. And now everyone's going to worship the ground I walk on. So I actually reported up to, she was not the CTO. Her title at the time was VP of Product Engineering and Marketing. So, which is why I'm really, really focused on, all of everything I say today is like SEO has to be a part of product, because I had this experience of actually my reporting structure. I reported to a director of digital marketing, who reported to this head of product, marketing, and engineering. So there was never any friction. So I needed to go to the person that ran, I guess, the front end, wherever this UI, like the thing with the 301, 302 was. And I went over to him. I introduced myself. I said I was just hired to do SEO, and I found this crazy SEO problem. We're doing everything wrong. Can I suggest a fix? And he turned his back on me and he said that marketing doesn't get to tell engineering what to do. And that was it. I was like, my bubble had been burst. I had this great problem. And in my very first week, I was not going to be able to get anything done because this person had no interest in doing anything. So that was the start of the job. And then I found another problem that they'd been working on for a long time, but they didn't have an SEO voice of reason on how they were going to do things. And I made a suggestion to the person that was overseeing this potential solution. It's actually something, it was one of the first things that ended up shipping, but this is my first interaction. It was what to do with the survey pages. So the survey pages are where they got all the backlinks coming into the site. And at the time, they were all on the English domain. So even though SurveyMonkey had a international SEO structure, they were all in the English domain, and they were trying to decide what to do. And there were various solutions. Again, I don't remember what the solution I proposed was. And I went to that meeting and I proposed the solution that I thought was well researched and was well rounded and was going to do the right thing for SEO. And this person who I made the suggestion to pauses, looks at me, and she says, "You know what? I think that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." And I was like, "Okay, I left a great startup. I'm at this big company and I'm never going to succeed because this other engineer has completely blocked me. This head of engineering, like whoever had this different role overseeing these survey pages, told me that I was an idiot and I can't get anywhere." And that is when I, internalized that I needed to change the approach. It wasn't going to be about being the smartest technical solution person. It was really had to be about how do I bring people along for the ride and how would I make small changes and earn credibility and do SEO that actually drives the business forward. So in my past job, I was at a startup, and it was really all about rankings and like SEO wins. And here at this company, I don't remember how much money they made, but they're making tens of millions of dollars at the time. They didn't care about my SEO wins. They cared about tens of millions of dollars. And that was when I started internalizing this pivot and really changed my entire approach to SEO.
I have two questions actually from what you've just mentioned, because first off, you have talked about this in your book Product Led SEO, that the importance of soft skills, like diplomacy, influence, product partnership, so that you could win over other parts of the team of a company so that you can actually reach your SEO goals. You can't work in isolation. So I wanted to first ask, what do you currently feel is in the job description of an SEO today? And like, how do they, has SEO also become a product role, like essentially wearing like a marketing badge? Or what are the soft skills needed and what are the equally important technical skills needed? Maybe you can list it down.
So I'm writing a newsletter post on this right now of how this should go. So I think I've always been, well, since that experience of learning that SEO needs all that buy-in, I've always felt that SEO should be product and should be some sort of product manager. Now, again, we in SEO, we don't get to make that decision because if your boss is in marketing and your title's marketing, that is what it is. But doesn't mean you can't function like a product manager. And the easiest thing to do is if you're in this position, go on to LinkedIn or Indeed or any job site and look at product manager job descriptions. And those things you're looking for, that's the way you could behave. So instead of SEO task lists, you just make a roadmap and you really make a structured roadmap and make a schedule where everything ladders into each other exactly the way a product manager would do things. So I've always been of that opinion for the last many years since that experience at SurveyMonkey. And it's even why I called my book Product Led SEO. And again, I write tons about this because I think it's so important to get things done, not from a technical wizardry standpoint, but really from a conceive of something, collaborate with people, ship it, build something that drives meaningful impact for a business. Now that we move into an AI first age, I think it's even more important because some of these technical skills are far less important. So if there's a technical challenge, you can go and ask AI how to solve the technical challenge. If you don't understand code, which is something I actually learned, but even before I started SurveyMonkey, I went to college and I learned marketing and I learned business, but I didn't learn anything about engineering. But I went to community college and I learned a little bit about how to program. So I had this understanding of how to build things and read things. Not that I could ever build them, but at least I tried to speak the language. But I think now it's much easier. Anyone can sort of vibe code things. And if you want to understand code, you just ask AI to read it back to you. So these soft skills, the ability to be a product manager and see the bigger picture and plan into the future and manage people's time and communicate, that becomes so much more important. So from an SEO job description, it's really about can you do analytics? Can you understand analytics? Not build out a dashboard, but can you really understand the insights of what you need to build? Do you have customer empathy? Do you have user empathy? That's an important part of product. Can you rally a team around you? Can you motivate? Can you sell? Can you get budget? Like that's the most important part of an SEO job description. A number of years of experience in raw SEO and ability to understand Google Search Console, I think, is far less important than some of those soft skills.
Fair enough. And in your most recent newsletter, you also mentioned, I think it's quite relevant to what we were talking about, the Trice framework. So this is a way in which SEOs can essentially use not just pick the right tactic that they need to deploy for their SEO strategy, but also picking the right fight so that you can get the corporation from engineering especially. Maybe you can talk more about how this framework is applicable and how it can help with the fight when trying to win over engineering. Because I think what is also interesting to point out is that even though we're all empowered by AI agents, there's still limitations in what we can do in our role as SEOs, and we still do need engineering. I think that's very important to state, because you can't vibe code through everything. There's security concerns, especially if you're working with bigger companies, which you know very well about because you have worked for some of the biggest companies in the tech world. Getting that engineering buying is super important. So maybe you can talk us through it.
So I'll tell you where I got it from. And first I want to give credit to Sean Ellis, who I think he pioneered ICE. So it's in his book, Growth Hacking. So I've extended it to Thrice. So where I came up with this and the need for this was, again, a SurveyMonkey experience. So SurveyMonkey, again, international SEO was very important. I don't remember the numbers, but we got a significant amount of traffic and users from outside of the US and outside of English. So there was always a lot of big, important things going on with international. And then it became a public company and they wanted to do things to get more attention to show them as being global. So one decision they want to work through, and this was not my idea, was, do we have TLDs for some of our international presences? So we had, for example, in France, it was fr.surveymonkey.com. And that's the way it was set up. And I inherited that. And in Germany, it was de.surveymonkey.com. So there were subdomains. So as much as I would say, best practices domain, you can't do that at a big company and say, change your entire structure. The main reason why, and this is the reason why I ran into issues, is because when someone logged in to de.surveymonkey.com, they had a cookie coming from surveymonkey.com that kept them logged in. So if they switched to fr.surveymonkey.com because they had a French colleague who was also working on a survey, that cookie maintained, the survey maintained, it was all in the same database, and only the UI language switched. So you can't really make a suggestion like, well, I think your company should all be on TLDs because that's best practice. But anyways, somehow this conversation started about we need to switch to TLDs. It became a 2-year process where we launched surveymonkey.co.uk, we launched surveymonkey.de, so de.surveymonkey.com moved over to SurveyMonkey, and everything English that I was geo-located to the UK then became surveymonkey.co.uk, so even more challenging. We needed to figure out all those cookie things, we needed to use local servers and databases in those markets and get compliant. Again, very challenging. By the time it launched, it didn't even matter. I think SEO best practices really changed. Because of mobile, you don't even see the TLDs. So unless you're on a desktop and you happen to notice .co.uk and really notice those little letters, look in your browser, you didn't notice. I went to both Germany and the UK as a part of user research. Again, I always focused on my role as product, and I talked to users there and I asked them what they thought about our big change from SurveyMonkey to surveymonkey.de and surveymonkey.co.uk, and they had no idea what I was talking about. They didn't even know it existed. So we spent millions of dollars building this thing. And that's where I came up with this. Wow, if only I prioritized. And it wasn't, I don't know that I could have stopped it. I just had to oversee it. We had meetings every week. There were tons of people working on this. And that's where I started thinking, there are so many things that I didn't do because I was stuck doing this thing. what if I would have prioritized better? What if these little things I wanted to do would have shipped and made us lots of money and made, my team look better, made the company look better, instead of this big thing that took 2 years, cost so much money, and the users didn't even notice, and it didn't even change a single thing in search traffic. And I noticed a couple of years ago, they switched it back. So that's where this idea came from. Now, moving on into consulting, a lot of times, and I've been consulting for 7 years, a lot of times when I go to companies, this is the problem. The problem is they're flooded with ideas and they don't know what to do. So last week I met with a company, or it was a private equity, one of the largest private equity groups in the world, that has deployed hundreds of millions of dollars, has billions of dollars to deploy into investing, has invested in some of the biggest companies in the world, and they're launching a new homepage. And they you launch a web page and you get flooded with SEO best practices and AEO best practices and GEO and all the things that they need to do because they're online too much. So I met with the marketing person who was in charge of doing this, and she starts asking me all these questions about, like, how do we make sure that our, again, private equity, and their investors are basically like not even private people, it's institutions and the government and all that. So I said, they're like, how do we make sure that we, do all the best things? And we're looking at these two different CMSs. And this is like, what do we do about JavaScript? And they're asking all these questions. And I said, hold on one second. Who is the audience for this website? What are you trying to do? And they said, well, we want, when our investors, when our general partners reach out to potential investments, that the company that we want to give money to and invest, that they find the bios of our general partners. They understand who they are. They know that they've gone to some very fancy schools and they've had great jobs and they're experts in their field. And they are willing to take a meeting, not even take the money, take a meeting with our private equity company. To which I said, I don't think SEO really plays into that goal much at all, because more than likely they'll find the LinkedIn profile of those people. They will find the website. No matter what, they will find the website is a very, very well recognized brand. They said the name of their website, they spelled their company without a space. Many people look for them with a space. They were very concerned about making sure the new website accounted for their brand not having a space. And I reassured them that SEO is not important for them, because no matter what, their bios of their general partners will be found. Their website will be found no matter how it is spelled, even if it is like completely misspelled. And then the last thing they were very concerned about is when they make an investment, they put out a blog post explaining why they've made this investment. So I pointed out, and I said, you can make this, I know maybe we'll get negative comments on this, but I said, you can make this blog post completely in JavaScript and all images, and it will be found, because all LLMs and search engines can crawl JavaScript. They can crawl images. They can parse images. I can take a picture of my washing machine leaking water on Gemini, and Gemini will diagnose that specific problem with image recognition. So search engines can do that. LLMs can do that. But the reason that you don't do that as a best practice is it's expensive for search engines. So if you would like to make sure your blog post is indexed, try to do it in best practices. But this private equity group makes less than 10 investments per year, which means they have less than 10 blog posts per year. Ideally, don't use JavaScript. Ideally, don't use images, but they're investing tens of millions of dollars. It is newsworthy. It moves the markets when they make these investments. When they make an investment, it is in the Wall Street Journal. It is in all the business press. It will get crawled. It will be ranked no matter how they build these pages. So again, I reassure them. And they were about to spend a lot of money on an SEO consultant, and even I didn't accept their money because I didn't think there was more that I could do beyond that 30-minute call, and maybe check in with them as a favor in a couple months to make sure they're still making the right decisions. So I think what it comes down to is SEO is a lot simpler today than it ever was. And it really is all about, like, what are you trying to accomplish and who is your end user for this search?
And you feel that even with the AI visibility or being discovered on AI being the forefront of what SEOs are most concerned about, or in trying to capitalize on organic search traffic, you still feel like it's much more simpler than it was before. And the example you gave, it's understandable because it's a big private equity company. It's a brand, so it has this huge brand that it can kind of utilize, right? And we also know that for LLMs, they sort of tend to favor bigger brands. But maybe what advice do you have for small and medium businesses, or like B2B SaaS companies, mid-tier B2B SaaS companies that are still trying to get some visibility? What advice and what would be maybe your diagnostic order for them on how they should do their SEO currently? Because it will definitely differ from. It's an amazing story, and it's really cool that you could just be like, "Hey, there's nothing more I can do for you," but how can these guys get some help?
Well, I just want to say one last thing. And we bridge this off of Thrice and prioritization, and which is why, for this private equity, they're doing so many things. When you prioritize and look at the outcomes of the efforts, making sure that they choose a CMS that has, like, I think title tags are very important for them. But other than that, making sure they choose a CMS that doesn't use JavaScript and blog posts, not really important, because the outcome of that isn't going to change anything at all. So to your question about what can smaller companies do, I think LLMs are forcing SEO and AEO and GEO and all that, whatever we call it, back into regular marketing. So if you took the entire digital aspect of acquisition out of marketing, so let's say my kids, if they want to make a lemonade business, they're not first launching their digital strategy. They're making good lemonade. They're getting the word of mouth out. They're making sure that when people buy lemonade, they tell like other people to go buy lemonade. Their pricing is right. I think what SEO did in the earlier days, and we're going 20 years ago, is it allowed businesses to ignore that. And affiliate marketers in particular were able to do this. They were like, they're great affiliates that serve a huge purpose, but affiliate marketing essentially became a shortcut for companies that didn't do a good job of their own marketing. Affiliates came out and said, well, actually, we know how to do marketing for the thing that you sell. So we're going to do SEO for the thing that you sell. We're going to do paid marketing for the thing that you sell. And then social came on the scene. They're like, well, you don't know how to do social. So we'll do social pretending we're you. We're even being transparent that we're not you. And then we'll get paid for essentially doing your marketing. What this means is that there's not that edge anymore of like, oh, you're better at SEO than I could be. So we're outsourcing my SEO to you. If you've provided a really good product and you're doing good marketing and there's word of mouth and people want to use your brand and understand your brand, the LLMs compensate for the gaps. So in traditional SEO, there have always been gaps. And there are websites that deserve to be well known and deserve to be found for what they should be found, but they're missing SEO best practices. And a lot of what Google and some of the other search engines did would fill in the gaps for those best practices. So as an example, let's say there's a small island nation in the Pacific and someone wants to know how to file taxes in that country, but that tax website has no idea how to do SEO. So should the user be disadvantaged and end up on an affiliate site that sells them shady software because that government agency, which is the government and is the canonical source for all the information, should they be disadvantaged because they couldn't show up? Maybe in the US, the IRS doesn't do as well SEO as H&R Block or any of these other tax websites, but Google does a really good job of figuring out, well, your title tag wasn't great, but we're going to rewrite the title tags. Now you surface better. They're filling those gaps in SEO. LLMs bring this even further, which is this brand may not do a great job of doing their own marketing, but they're a great brand, which we know from the footprint around the internet. And therefore, if you've asked this question, we're going to give you this brand because you deserve this brand. And the best way of thinking about this is, for the longest time, I thought that restaurants should not do SEO, because they were building websites. Many times the websites didn't accomplish the thing they wanted to accomplish. They were terrible websites. They were old. They had menus and PDFs, and they were completely useless. When you went online and you searched pizza near me, you were looking for Google Maps or maybe Yelp, DoorDash, something that allows you to get that pizza. You weren't looking for a PDF download of prices that haven't been updated in 5 years. But now we're in a different stage where if the restaurant doesn't have a website, they don't have their own way of feeding the LLM. So if the LLM says, wow, someone searched best pizza near me, I would like to suggest, Jimmy's Pizza, but I don't know if they serve pizza. I don't know if they, have vegan pizza, and I don't know how much it charges. So therefore, that pizza shop needs to have a website in order to feed the information to LLM. Now, if Jimmy's Pizza is a terrible pizza, it will not show up for best pizza near me. So you need to do both. So what this really means is that the most important part of LLMs is doing good marketing and having a good business and being recommended for the thing you should be recommended for. And I think they're much harder to game. And again, every time I say this on LinkedIn, there's pushback about like, well, I was able to poison the LLM and I did all these things. I think it's very short term. Like maybe it will last for the next year, but the way the LLMs are supposed to work is it's supposed to be your extended digital brain, your extended digital assistant. And the example I always like to give, and I know you had Max Wolf on from On, and I love examples of shoes. And if you ever see an example in an LLM of marketing, it talks about either CRMs content that talks about CRMs or shoes, it's LLM written because I don't know, they really like shoes and they really like CRMs. But in the shoe space, when you see a pair of Ons and you see a knockoff of Ons that are sold on Temu, how do you know the difference between the real one and the not real one? It's completely subconscious. There's something about the color scheme on the On shoe. Maybe you're looking at Nike. There's something about the direction of the swoosh, and then there's a knockoff that's not really Nike that just subconsciously you're like, that doesn't sit well with me, and I don't know why, and I can't explain it. The LLMs picked it up. The LLMs are picking up they're AI. They're picking up all those subconscious signals. So you can fake a lot of what you can fake. And the way people are trying to fake it now is Reddit. But Reddit is just like one thing. It's like you get the swoosh perfectly, but you didn't get the color, deep white perfectly on the shoe. So again, you failed. And that's what the LLMs are trying to do. So I think in a couple of years from now, they're going to be able to get rid of a lot of the obvious spam today. There'll be new spam. Marketers are always smarter than technology. But that's the direction they're going. So build the right brand, be the right product, build customers.
Okay. I wanted to say how this is also in line with what happened with the core updates back in March, where aggregate sites were taken down, and now you see Google trying to they're basically doubling down on everything that will benefit a brand and benefit like authentic marketing. If you do authentic marketing practices, you just follow in with the best practices. That seems to help you quite a bit. And also I wanted to get your opinion on, I guess recently there was the Google Search Summit, if I'm not mistaken. Not summit, but it was more like a conference where they also mentioned, the team at Google, how llms.txt file is not really necessary anymore. So it's something that we thought might have changed how we have done SEO. It's something that you probably would have seen on LinkedIn. A lot of people were mentioning it and being like, oh, you need to make sure everything's on llms.txt files so that you could gain some AI visibility. So what are your opinions on all the news that's coming out? How do you stay updated? Who's your trusted source when figuring out what works for AI visibility and what maybe has changed for SEO?
So I think that a lot of these things come out because agencies want to make sure that they're relevant. So agencies are moving, like a lot of what agencies did in the past. Let's say one of the biggest outputs of agencies has been content, but now content has been replaced by LLMs and the content isn't even valuable anymore because of helpful content updates. So agencies are trying to stay relevant by coming up with new strategies around LLMs that potentially don't even work. And I know we need to talk about AI visibility tools, but a lot of what happens with LLMs is you're not able to test it because you don't know whether it drives meaningful traffic. You don't even know if your prompts show up. You can use those AI visibility tools, but they may not even be accurate. So you're doing all these things. You're like, well, we're using LLMs.txt. You don't know that it does anything because you don't have the outcomes of those tests. Okay, so the only thing we can do is trust Google. Now, agencies, some unscrupulous agencies will say, well, we're LLM first, and this is what we're going to do. You're going to pay us to build an LLMs.txt. So I think that's where a lot of these things come from. Where I stay most updated with everything is I follow the things that Google's doing, but where I really stay updated is by testing. So I get to work with some huge brands and get to see what they're doing. What's fascinating, I know every time I try to say that AEO is really an extension of SEO, there's always pushback on LinkedIn about, oh, I've done all these things and these are the different things. 95% of what you're doing for AEO, aside from the marketing, is really just SEO. You're very unlikely to find something mentioned in an LLM that didn't already do well in search for a lot of those similar terms. It's very possible you'll find something that does well in SEO that does not get mentioned in AEO because maybe they're not relevant. And I would say is I am working as a consultant with one of the largest LLMs in the world, and all of the challenges that they're working on are all SEO. So SEO remains super important. And I love seeing on LinkedIn all these statistics about this is how much Google drives versus ChatGPT. I'm not even sure that ChatGPT traffic will ever be more meaningful than it is today, mostly because Google is very good at their monopoly. So LLM, like Google will probably be the dominant LLM because Google, and I've written this in my newsletter, has distribution. So Google has solved the distribution problem that ChatGPT and Claude and DeepSeek and certainly not Perplexity will never be able to solve because they have Android, they have Chrome, and even more importantly, when I love this statistic when people are like, well, doesn't matter, Gen Z doesn't search. Well, I don't know how it is in most countries, but in the US, most kids get their very first computing device from their school, which is a Chromebook made by Google that has Chrome in it. So Google has that Trojan horse and Google has Gmail. So like they've nailed distribution. So I think we are going to switch to an LM first world. I think AI mode will likely become the default shortly after Google I/O this year. And it will be some sort of new UI of search, but that's going to be the dominant LLM. So when we think about, is it Google versus ChatGPT? I actually think it's Google versus Google. And the best way to do well in AI mode and AI overviews and Gemini and whatever else Google will launch is really by doing SEO best practices and then layer that on with marketing best practices and business best practices and customer best practices. And actually, I think if we stop being marketers for a moment, that's awesome. As users, we don't want to land on websites that are not relevant for us. One of my favorite things that will come out of all of this is we get at this diversity in search. So if you read Google's updates every year about what they've done for the year, they focus a lot on spam. And that's actually their biggest challenge, which is how do they keep the web clean of all the spam? So, many other search engines failed at this. Even Bing doesn't do great at this. Is you do a search and you're like, well, that's pretty ugly. Why are these websites there? And Google, you very rarely have that where you're just like, I don't know why these completely spammy. You might not have great websites, but they're not spammy. So Google does a really good job of cleaning spam out and protecting users from going to the websites they shouldn't go to. So what it comes down to is that Google has solved this part of the user's problem. They have the trust from users. And I think for that reason, they're likely going to remain dominant. And we're not going to get all of these there's no reason to go to any of these other search engines. And where this comes into diversity is when you're doing these searches on, again, it's going to be in Google or it'll be in Gemini or it'll be in AI mode or it'll be in AI overview. In the past, because of the spam efforts, Google would prioritize, maybe they even whitelisted websites like Facebook, Instagram, Walmart, Amazon, because they knew that if you went to shop from Amazon, you were going to get the thing and you were going to not get your credit card stolen. And they didn't surface small websites because of these spam reasons. Now, they don't have to worry about surfacing a small website because they don't care if Eli or Vanessa gets spammed or gets our credit card stolen. They do care if everyone that searched on shoes, for example, went to a website that's not really on.com and they got their credit card stolen. But they can test a website on 100 different people without affecting the scale. So again, I think that's why Google remains dominant because they've figured out the most important part of this is sending people to non-spammy websites and they understand that. So that's amazing to me. Like the diversity that will come in is better for users.
And also the trust that they've already accumulated for users. It'll be much more easy for them to integrate, payments and purchasing. We already sort of trust the platform as users as well. I wanted to very quickly, before I ask you to name drop what's currently in your tech stack, I still want to focus a bit on Google because you've mentioned that AI mode is a tsunami, and you flagged that the monetization announcement is the real signal. And most recently, there's the launch of the AI mode in Chrome with the side by side. And my question about this is, you feel that AI mode becoming dominant, it was just a matter of Google not having solved monetization without actually cannibalizing their paid ads. So do you think the side-by-side view is Google protecting publishers, or is it just like a transition step before they open up the AI mode floodgates? Wanted to get your predictions.
So Google's balancing a lot of different things. I don't think they care to protect publishers at all. It's not in their best interests. They've already gotten the content. They've spent years learning on the web. Everyone will complain about that, but that's great. Like they've benefited from the free Google search for many years. There's nothing they can do to stop it now. The cat's already out of the bag. The horse has left the barn. They've already learned about the web, so they don't need the publishers anymore. Where they do need the publishers is Google's an ads business, and they sell ads on those publisher sites. So they're balancing that whole thing. Now, Google's, I think, a 200,000 person company. So you have different voices pushing back against things. So you may have the search voice that's saying, let's launch AI mode. This is great. It's great for users. Users love it. And then this is not a thing that Google ever really measured before, but maybe they measure time on site, their own personal time on site. I would have to imagine that time on site, time Googling has gone up significantly when you do something in AI and it says, what else would you like to learn? And now you stay in, you haven't just done a single search, and you're more likely to click a paid ad. But then you have these other voices in Google who say, well, you've done this and now you've robbed all of our revenue. What am I supposed to tell our customers? So there's that balance. And I don't know if they've completely solved that balance, but that balance will be solved. I think users really, really like AI mode. I think they like the way it works. I like it. I think when it's not about 10 results anymore, it's about 40 results, but it's a deep understanding of what you're trying to do, and you get answers in a much more constructive way. By default, I'm using a lot of things in AI mode because like I know that that's how I'll get there. And I'll give you an example. I have a Brother printer at home, and Brother does this very unfair thing where they sell you toner and they decide when the toner is out, and then it can no longer print anymore because the toner is out. Now,
Sorry, also for our audience listening, Brother is the brand of printer, and
yeah,
it's not just Eli saying his brother.
my brother's not a printer. Yes, so I have a Brother, and this is a hack for everyone here listening. Okay, so the Brother printer toner decides when it is out, and it just doesn't let you print anymore because the toner is out. I don't want to buy a new toner for $50 just because Brother counted how many pages it is. And you can reset the counter and it'll keep printing probably until it says toner is out again, because like there's actually plenty more toner. Depends on what you print. If you print like things that are very dark, maybe it won't work. So there's a way to reset the counter. And you can go on Google and you can find ways to go on to reset the counter. You can go on YouTube and find ways to reset the counter. So I forgot about AI mode. And I went on Google and I put the name of my printer in and said, how do I reset the counter? And I got information back for other Brother printers. Again, not my brother. Thank you, Vanessa. So I got information back for other Brother printers and how to reset the counter, and it didn't work. So then I went to AI mode and I said, okay, I'm trying to reset the counter on this specific model. And I got the answer, because what AI mode did is it Googled all those sites and got me the specific thing. And it ignored all the SEO and the domain authority that got those other websites in traditional search to show up. So I think AI mode is a great example. And within AI mode, when I wanted to find the specific button, it had that the YouTube short right there, right to the second. So I think it's a better experience, but they have to balance it with monetization. So I think from the product manager experience within Google, making sure that users enjoy Google, that's way better for everyone. So that's why I think it comes out, not because Google's trying to beat ChatGPT. I think at this point, they probably have beaten ChatGPT in consumer search.
Do you think ChatGPT is now like in third place? It's like a second, or I would say Claude is first, but maybe Google is basically in second place, but not for long. It'll eventually be Google in place 1, 2, 3. But yeah, what is your?
So I don't think about those places at all. I think that Google has always been the best search engine for consumers. And you've ignored Bing. You've ignored all the other search engines. So I think Google is always the best product for consumer searches, and it remains the best product for consumer searches. I think that Claude is not the best AI in general. It's the best AI for coding. It's the best AI for, let's say, content creation and any of the other good things that Claude is good at, but it doesn't make them better at Google. It just makes them better at those tasks. I wrote this in my newsletter a few weeks ago. Before ChatGPT came out, everyone said that Google is done because TikTok. No one's going to Google anymore. People only use TikTok to search and find things. And that was true for the things that use TikTok to search and find things. So it's not that TikTok was going to beat Google. It was just taking away travel search, restaurant search, but it wasn't taking away academic search. So I don't think of like Google's in first place and ChatGPT is in third place. I think of it as Google's very good at consumer searches. Google's very good at mobile search. It built into most phones. Claude is very good for operational kinds of things. ChatGPT will define what they're very good at. They think they're very good for companies building on top of them. I don't think that ChatGPT has ever been the best consumer search. Even when ChatGPT came out, they weren't up to date. and they relied on Google for some of these reasons. Grok is also a very good search engine. I think Grok does a very good job of summarizing the web, but it's not very original. So all these LLMs are just different tools, and I don't think of them competing against each other unless they think of themselves competing against each other for enterprise and like buying tokens. But from a consumer standpoint, I think it remains Google because they're good enough that no one has to switch behavior, and they have, again, insane distribution from all their devices and software.
So then as a marketer, then it's important to sort of have personas, understand your persona and knowing what they might be. So for example, if you are a marketer for a B2B SaaS company, right now it might be interesting to know about your about Claude's plugins and how you would want your tool being, if you are able to connect it with Claude, to be recommended. And that would be different than how you might be mentioned on Google, right? Because of the kind of users that would be there. So then do you then think it's going to be, there'll be more places in which personas or your buyers exist, and adding that into your wider marketing plan? Wanted to hear
A
your
hundred
thoughts on
percent.
this.
Yeah, I think it comes down to doing better marketing. So we moved from a world where before LLMs came on the scene, it was a world where dominated completely by Google and Meta. So if you wanted acquisition, you did organic acquisition only on Google, and you did paid acquisition basically on Google and Meta, and that was it. Maybe you did a little TikTok, but now we've moved to this world where you need to do better marketing. And I think one of the best things that came out of all this LLM spam conversations is Reddit has risen up as a place that you want to do paid and organic marketing. I think Reddit has always had a defined place. Reddit's been around a long time. And in years past, before I did SEO at SurveyMonkey, one of my jobs was getting the company I worked at to be viral on social media. So I had a number of Reddit profiles, and I did that almost every day, getting a front page of Reddit. So I think Reddit has a place, and Reddit will remain a place. It's not a feeder for LLMs. It's its own social network, just like YouTube, just like TikTok, just like Instagram. So there are places marketers need to think about, broader places to go. One thing that I think has been recalculated since COVID ended is, where do conferences and live events fit? And I think there's more live events. I used to go to SEO conferences that were huge, and I think now there's more specific SEO conferences in cities that may work better for companies. So as a marketer, you want to think, where are your customers at? If you're selling real estate, you're not just on Google trying to make sure people Google for you. You're going to real estate conferences. You're participating in real estate Reddit threads. You're in Facebook communities on real estate. You're advertising on Facebook. So I think these are the things that, as a marketer, our jobs have actually gotten more exciting. But also as a user, there's so many better places you can go than just getting, your social media experience polluted by marketers, or your search experience polluted by marketers. So yes, this now becomes another surface that you want to think about. So if you're targeting, maybe senior citizens, you can ignore everything around LLMs. If you're targeting children or, young adults, maybe you're only on LLMs, but it really is about where your customers are and who your customers are.
Very quickly before we jump into a rapid fire round, I want to pick your brain a bit about what's currently in your tech stack. Any tools you'd like to shout out, or what do you use day to day? Actually, are you a vibe coder yourself? Talk us through.
Actually, before I answer that, I forgot. I'm supposed to promote my book. I'm writing a book called Customer Intelligence with Wiley. And the last thing I just said, understanding who your marketers are, that's what the book's about. So I think it'll come out like the end of this year. If you're listening to this at the end of the year, you can find out more about the book, but it's almost done being written. As far as my tech stack, I use Google almost exclusively for everything. So I use Gemini I use Gemini first for thinking through things and understanding. Like, I'll take pictures of stuff and chat about ideas, and a little bit of AI mode, and then sometimes Notebook LM. But then I think Claude is the best at all of my newsletters. I put into Claude, and I ask Claude to critique it and tell me where my gaps are and where my ideas are weak. And then I'll bring that back and rewrite it, and keep going back and forth to Claude for ideas. Attempted to vibe code, but vibe coding only gets interesting to me when it solves a problem. So I think vibe coding is fantastic if you come up with something that's very quick. So for vibe coding, base 44 is very easy. Lovable is very easy. But I always have a challenge in getting to the next step of like, well, is this usable without me continuing needing to update it? And that's where, and I've met with a lot of companies that are very large in the vibe coding space who are thinking through marketing challenges. And the marketing challenge they have is, many of the vibe coded apps are built for individual use cases, and they're not companies. And the vibe coding companies are trying to use that as a lever to get more customers, or the business, like you can vibe code anything you want, but you can't market. I don't think you can vibe market anything you want. But yeah, so my tech stack's very simple. It's mostly just Gemini and Claude.
And any AI visibility tools that have caught your interest?
So I am frequently getting messages from AI visibility tools to check them out, and I've invested in a couple. My favorite is Athena. So Athena was started by a former DeepMind, which Google DeepMind engineer, and they are starting from a much smaller standpoint of just trying to help understand AI visibility and what you can do about AI visibility. I also invested in AirOps, which I think is great for content workflows. I think the best tools are ones that can help you do better marketing rather than we've invented a new SEMrush or here's a new Ahrefs. I think SEMrush and Ahrefs and the traditional SEO tools like Conductor are also fantastic at a lot of the SEO tool set. We don't need just an LLM visibility dashboard. I don't know that LLM visibility on its own even matters that much. So my favorite general visibility tool, beyond SEMrush and Ahrefs is actually SimilarWeb because I think they have some of the best data. But knowing what your AI visibility is, if you can't do anything about it or even know if it's accurate, I don't know if that's something worth investing a lot of SEO resources in.
Fair. Before we jump into the rapid fire round, I do have one more question because I feel like you've been in the industry for a long time. You've seen like the SEO industry go through, its gold rush era and then crack down. You've also now worked at Reddit. Worked on trying to game Reddit for clients. So must be interesting to see it come full circle and popularity right now and people trying to seed Reddits. So yeah, you've seen SEO go through like content farms, programmatic SEO pages, link building tactics that are slightly scammy. I wanted to ask, what stage do you think we're in right now with like the mix of AI generated content and AI driven SEO tactics?
So I think that SEO is about to change, and the bottom 50% of SEO practitioners are going to be chopped off and obsolete. So I think the ones that are just doing spammy citations, what used to be called backlinks, they're not really necessary anymore. So I think people are still paying for them, but they're not going to be necessary. I think agencies that only churn out content, like before LLMs, they were churning out content with low cost writers. Now they're churning it out LLMs. I think that will no longer be necessary. But I think some of the bigger SEO challenges will absolutely be necessary. The people that can really think through the soft parts of SEO, that can manage products and manage roadmaps, those people are more necessary than ever. I think there are many, like I said, I'm working with one of the LLMs on their own technical SEO challenges, that those people that can think through those things will always be necessary. I think our industry has become tremendously bloated because there's so much money to be made and there's so many services to be made and services to be done that I think it will shrink down. A lot of the content becomes unnecessary. A lot of the backlinks become unnecessary. A lot of the SEO audits become unnecessary. Even a lot of just raw rank reporting. There were agencies that were paid monthly just to report on rankings. I think that becomes unnecessary too. So I think we're in a great stage where we're at this pivot where SEO becomes marketing again. Where if you don't have a good product and you don't have good customers, and or if you're brand new, you don't have a vision for good customers and understand the use case of why customers are going to want to use you, there may not be as much of a need for SEO anymore. So I think this is a fantastic place to be for creative marketers that want to add value. I think it's going to be a tough place to be if you can't really differentiate what you're doing from someone else.
And how do you feel about the recent role called SEO engineering? Do you think it's just a technical SEO, or do you feel like this role has new distinctive tasks that can validate being called an SEO, someone being called an SEO engineer? How do you feel about this new role? Sorry.
So I think companies that are trying to change the name of the role are trying to change the name so there's more budget allocated to the team. And I don't think it'll be effective. It's like, I spent almost all my career in Silicon Valley. And in Silicon Valley, there are not a lot of SEO managers. There are a lot of growth managers. There are a lot of product managers that do SEO. It doesn't really matter. Actually, one of the things that taught me that SEO should be product is a fascinating thing. So I was at SurveyMonkey, and my manager was the VP of marketing, and she left. So I was moved on to a new team, and my manager became the VP of product, or I think he's the VP of product. So she left, moved over to VP of product. He's my new manager. I'm still doing the exact same thing. I still had my team of 3 or 4. And my new manager sends me an email saying, I already knew him, but so it wasn't a meet and greet. He's like, it's really important that we talk in the next couple of days. And I was very concerned. So we sit down to talk, and he says, I was going through your salary, and your title in HR is marketing specialist number 4, but I looked at what you do and you're actually product specialist number 4. And I was like, this is really annoying. He's like, but product specialist 4 makes 10% more in salary than what you do. So we're going to adjust that. I just wanted to make sure you were aware that that was happening. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I'm doing the exact same thing. I still have the same team, but because I am now product, because I report to someone in product, I'm going to make more money. Again, I was already thought about my role as a product person and already managed a roadmap. So it doesn't matter what we call SEO people if they're not doing the right things, are not effective, and they're not internally effective. And I don't think you're going to have any SEO engineers at external agencies. You just can't really do that. So it's not about titles. It's really about what the role does and how effective they are. And I think the most effective SEO, whatever, is going to be with SEO in a product visibility role.
And would you want to name that role? Is it product-led SEO? Is that going to be the title for the...
No, it should be a product manager, SEO product manager.
SEO product manager, understood.
So
Because it's
they're
also
managing the product.
because for people that are going into the industry of SEO, because right now there's lots of visibility in what's going on in this space, and if they see an SEO engineer, it's like, oh, do I get that extra 10% because it's more technical, really? It's it's an interesting time, but I think there's lots of obviously like jargon being tossed around, like it was with what GEO is versus AI SEO versus I feel like the same thing is happening for job descriptions and job roles within the SEO space, but it's very important then to focus on being close to product and marketing and just making sure you're doing good SEO.
Yeah, well, I actually think those two things are in conflict. I think the way engineers think and the way SEO thinks and the way product thinks is totally different. So the way engineers think is completely logical. It's, we don't write code anymore, but AI writes code. But if you were writing code, everything in code is sequential. So one piece of code comes after another. So it doesn't go back and execute something that's higher up. It's execute this, then execute that, and then it'll loop back if it's told to loop back. But that's part of what it's doing. The second thing that happens in code is everything has an alternative. So if do this, if not, do something else. And it's completely logical. There's no gray area. When marketers always have gray area, especially creative marketers. And that's why I think, again, I like this SEO product because it's like a marketing product person. So I have many examples from my consulting career. So I was working with a large public company that had never done SEO before, and they wanted to scale SEO. And the first thing they wanted to do was get a CMS because they needed content. And when we worked through my frameworks, and Trice was one of the frameworks we worked through, we decided not to get a CMS. And I recommended not getting a CMS because it would have taken 6 months to decide what CMS to get and then a year to get the CMS. And by that time, me as a consultant, I would have been fired and the whole team would have been gone. Instead, we manually coded all the pages, proved the concept, and then it became cheaper to continually manually code pages and scale. We scaled 200,000 pages like that. Then again, to buy a CMS for millions of dollars. Engineers, the way they think of it is problem needs content, solution needs CMS. It's harder to get to the gray area of prioritization, which again, product is way better at. Another example, I think this might have been when I was consulting with LinkedIn, but from a prioritization standpoint, they were looking at SEO as the biggest engineering challenge. And it's really not about engineering challenge. Again, Thrice is a great example. It's really about what is the best user challenge, which is something product thinks about. Or what is the best impact challenge, which is thing that marketing thinks about. So that's why I don't think appending the word engineer to SEO, you're going to get engineers that are responsible for SEO. You're not going to get marketing and product people that are better because they have an engineering title. So I really don't think SEO engineer takes off.
I see. So product-led SEO might be a better fit. Yeah, because it does make sense. When you have an engineer, it's very black and white in what they're actually achieving. And when you're a marketer, an SEO marketer, it's more of a gray area to sort of fit those two together. It doesn't really make sense. Okay. Interesting, because a lot of the bigger companies are using SEO engineers in their, so that's
total
a
mistake.
bit controversial take.
Yeah, I think it's an external thing that they're trying to show that they're more into this. I'll give you another
Taking
example.
it more seriously? Do you think it's a way to sort of like make SEOs have more weight to their title as opposed to just being another marketing,
It could be that there's external optics, but either way, I just don't see that as being effective. I'll give you another example. This is the marketing head. I've done this a few times. So many engineers don't like problems. A 404 is a problem. It's a bad thing to have because it means that your page is dead. Google finds it 404. Now, from a marketing standpoint, I first did this at SurveyMonkey, and you can see this today. If you go to SurveyMonkey's 404, so surveymonkey.com, put in any gibberish you want, you're going to see a sign up page. So you're going to see a link with a call to action. And I've done this at many companies, most companies I've worked at. I think I did this at Tinder also. Tinder's 404, I think, also has a call to action. And I think Coinbase.
Sign up for free. You want to create your survey, sign up for
10% of accounts come from that. And the reason why is because most surveys are emailed to people, and the links, if the links break, you assume that there's somebody sent you this email and they want you to sign up. So you get a free account, and then you end up in the CMS and then a CRM, and then you're getting targeted with, paid ads, and those free accounts become paid accounts. Now, from an engineering standpoint, 404 bad, get rid of all 404s, solve the problem that makes 404. From a marketing standpoint, I saw this as a problem I'm never going to solve. It's going to be continued engineering whack-a-mole. Let's monetize it by adding a call to action. So that's why I don't think you can have engineering and marketing be the same. A marketing engineer is just an engineer that works on the marketing team that does marketing tech.
We shouldn't get that confused. I just checked out the Tinder's 404, and it's actually very marketing heavy. It doesn't even say that it's a 404 error. It goes straight into creating an account because it knows the audience that lands on this page. So that's really cool. Awesome. So first question, citations are the new rankings. Agree or disagree? What's the nuance do you think people miss?
Absolutely not. I think citations are not something you can manipulate. Whenever someone reaches out to me as a potential consulting client and they tell me they found me on ChatGPT or Gemini, I ask them for this specific prompt, and then I look at it and I see why the LLM recommended me, and it'll be a citation I never would have guessed. Like, it'll be like some conference I spoke at in like 2017, and I have a bio and I mentioned the word that they looked at. So when it comes to citations, people are trying to manipulate them like backlinks, but the LLMs, like we talked about multiple times earlier, they think, and they're trying to find the best way to understand what matches for a user. So you're manipulating some citations, but most of the citations that matter for a business that deserves to be there are completely organic.
Which metric do you think most teams track right now that's almost meaningless?
AI visibility. It's like the one I see is share of voice, and it's like
but this was a social media metric, right? Previously, share of voice, if I'm not mistaken. They used to.
It's even worse. It's like when you take a bucket of water out of the ocean and you try to calculate how much of the bucket represents the entire ocean. Like, it's just not calculable. So yes, it could be a social media mention if you're comparing versus anybody else, but you don't know the entire ocean of prompts that someone could search. So you have no idea whether you are that same share of voice. A better metric, if you want share of voice, is to do just a brand tracking survey, because the LLMs are trying to mimic real life. So if you do a brand tracking survey, we'll go back to, On as a shoe. So if you're comparing, you do a brand tracking survey and you say, how do you recognize On versus Nike versus Adidas versus Puma? And you have 15% brand recognition, I would say the LLMs are trying to surface you just as often on those kind of queries, because that's real life.
What's one SEO task that should be automated by default by every team?
Probably reporting. I think that most teams spend way too much time on the Search Console reporting. Like, I come into companies and they're spending like 5 hours a week on, I don't know, cutting and pasting. Not necessary.
And do you have any advice on how they can automate reporting? What workflow works for you?
So the same way I approach SEO and marketing from a user standpoint of who is the audience. So within a company, if you're building out reporting, you want to understand who the audience is. Who's the executive? What are they trying to understand? What do they want to learn from the reporting? And then you can decide what it is that you build. And it could all be the API, or you can even vibe code something where you're going, if the CEO cares very much about impressions, then you build a dashboard around impressions. If they care very much about clicks, then build that. And then marry that in with business intelligence reporting to know if it converts into something.
Next question. What's one of your favorite boring SEO tactic that you still think that works today?
HTML sitemaps. I think that everyone always, I don't think technical SEO is that useful anymore. Like I said earlier, I think that the engines account for a lot of your missteps when it comes to SEO. Like, if you used a 301 versus 302, they'll figure it out. You have too many 404s, they'll figure it out. Internal linking is the one technical task I would put a lot of effort into. No site, unless it's a very small site, has done an effective job at internal linking. But if you have an HTML sitemap and you link it in the footer, and every page on your website is in this HTML sitemap, then they have a way to find every single page on your site. And I would call out LinkedIn as having a fantastic HTML sitemap. So everyone should try this, listening and watching. Go to LinkedIn, logged out, and the bottom of LinkedIn's website, again, completely logged out, are a sitemap. I didn't do this, but I worked on different projects then. But they have an HTML sitemap for all companies on LinkedIn and all people. And the way their HTML sitemap is structured is the people one has the most important people. So like famous people like Barack Obama will be on that, or Tim Cook will be on that, because they're making
Mhm.
sure that the search engines, when they hit the HTML sitemap, they see the most important people first. And then it's alphabetized. All billion people are on it. And the same with companies. So like on the first page, it'll be Amazon and Walmart and Apple, and then it's alphabetized.
I
I,
see.
I don't think it's necessary for LinkedIn, but I think other websites can learn from that.
It's good to use. Okay, fair enough. Check that out real quick. What is the worst or most overhyped SEO trend that you're currently seeing in the AI era?
We'll go back. We'll repeat this again. Reddit. So
Fair.
Reddit is being viewed as like some shortcut, and I actually think it. And I wrote about this on my newsletter too. I think it's very dangerous because Reddit's a social network, and you're like angering actual humans who are going to be mad that you're spamming them, and they'll write negative Reddit posts. They might write negative X posts, and like it'll come off. Whatever you've done on Reddit doesn't stay on Reddit. And the one thing that I don't think many are aware of is that Reddit has a partnership with both OpenAI and Google where they're giving the fire hose. That doesn't mean that they're giving an HTML sitemap of everything that's posted. They're giving the entire thing. So if you're creating fake accounts and your accounts are getting banned because you're posting spam, like that could become a signal that Google's like, wow, this website keeps posting the same thing and they're getting their accounts banned, and they could learn from that too. So they see everything. They see deleted comments. They see that if something gets downvoted and even if it doesn't show up, it's hidden, they're seeing that too. So I don't know what they would do with it, but they got it all.
So do you think they're as strict as Google and that the community on Reddit will survive and it's not really, you can't really sort of infiltrate and try and game Reddit to your advantage if you're a brand?
Yeah, I think not. It's 2026. Like people are approaching it from like a 2010 way of spamming. Like I don't think these things really exist as shortcuts. So they're like, well, Google's really smart and it can have self-driving cars, but then they're just totally going to fall because I created my own subreddit for my brand and no one downvoted me. Like I think that's too stupid of a tactic to really survive in 2026.
What's your favorite LLM?
Think that I like Anthropic and Claude for doing actual tasks, but I think Gemini is the best well-rounded.
Are you sure you're not paid by Google? And how many times you've dropped Gemini? They're just your favorite.
So I don't understand why there are people in the SEO industry that like to catch Google and get mad at Google. They're the largest company in our space, and I think they have missteps, and I don't think that like they're a large corporation and they're not going to do right by everyone. Aligning myself with the company that drives the most value for this entire space, I think is better than trying to catch them and be on their bad side. I said that
They're great.
I spoke at one of those Google events, the Google Search Live events in San Francisco, and I started my presentation. I ended it with by asking everyone to stand up and applaud Google because like we are all there
We're all
wearing
employed.
we're all there wearing clothes and eating food and like living because like Google feeds us. Like, so yeah, I mean, especially on SEO consultants, like they make our job, but they take from us. Like if you're a business, like, yes, they're not necessarily generous to you, but for SEO, they're generous.
What's one SEO task you never want to do manually again?
I stopped doing audits. I never do audits anymore. In my early consulting career, I spent like, 40 hours doing an audit. They've never even been read. Like I've presented them and you watch like the people receiving the audit, their eyes glaze over. So I'm not doing them anymore. What
And
I
this
do
is
is
very, sorry.
I do problem focused things. So if someone's like, well, why is this section of our website not working? Then I will audit that, but I'm not going to do a whole website audit.
And for those of you listening, this is very credible advice for someone that has consulted Coinbase, Shutterstock, Zendesk, Quora, Tinder, like the list goes on. And the fact that you're saying, I don't actually do edits, that's pretty interesting. Also a very cool flex that you don't have to do any deep dive audits and still secure these kind of clients. My next question, and I only have three more questions. In 6 months from now, what AI capability do you think will change SEO significantly?
So this is the one that not enough people are talking about, and I'm trying to talk about this a lot, but personalization. Personalization is going to change everything around SEO completely. So I was at Google I/O last year when they talked about personalization, and when I heard them talk about it, I'm like, this is the end of SEO. Because what personalization does is and they've been working on it for a long time, is what it does is every question you ask is now deeply personalized. So they know not just the things that they always said they could do, like your age and your gender and your location, but they know who you are. They know your like your behavior. They like, if it's Google, and I think Google's already done this and doing this and extending this, they know your Gmail shopping history. So if you're asking for, let's say, a new Brother printer, if I ask Google to suggest a new printer, Google already knows which printer I had. They know how much I paid for it because it came from Gmail. That's part of the personalization graph. They know the websites I visited. They are in Chrome. They potentially track how many pages I even print per month. Like, they know so much. So now when I go to Google and I say, I need a new printer, suggest a new printer or printers or HP versus Brother, they're giving me an answer that they're not going to give any other human on the planet. So doing SEO, like, I can optimize for best printer and it doesn't matter anymore because it's not the best printer for me. So I think that's coming.
Wow.
It's already there. And I actually find it super frustrating. I don't know if you have this turned on yet, but if I'm in AI mode and I ask, like, I need a new credit card, Google will say, well, based on the fact that you work in SEO, I'm like, not relevant for this conversation.
Yeah, we've been cookied. It's being cookied to another level, right? You're already annoyed when you see certain ads, but now it's getting into your answers, and it's just like, oh, yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how that plays out. Second last question. So if AI vanishes tomorrow or turns too costly, which part of your workflow breaks first?
Probably for consulting, probably very little, because I only focus on users. When it comes to AI, I only focus on users. So in every single consulting client I have and every single meeting I have, it's really about understanding stakeholders. So whether it's internal or external stakeholders. And I very
Okay.
rarely focus on AI. To me, for the client, AI is just a different user layer of how users are discovering what they're finding. For me, I'd find it very challenging because I've been addicted to, like, not doing Google searches and getting quick answers.
Okay, so your workflow is not totally dependent on
Not at all.
the new tech. Okay, interesting. Very last question. What's one word you would use to describe the future of SEO?
Marketing. Like, I know I talked about it as being product, but it's it's really, SEO becomes holistic marketing, thinking about the user, understanding the user, conceptualizing. Like, one thing that I think that many people have always done wrong is they thought about keywords. Like, what are the keywords that someone's searching for? I get emails like this multiple times per week where companies will come in and they'll say, we're trying to rank on this word. We made a new software and the name of our software is Ocean. How do we rank better on Ocean? Well, that's a marketing problem. They should not have named their software Ocean. Like, yes, it felt good to put on an AI on a VC pitch deck, but they didn't think through how users are going to be looking for that and how they're going to be competing against it. So SEO becomes more marketing. You think of that holistic way of positioning something. Doesn't conflict with the fact that I think the SEO team needs to be within product because you execute on that marketing within product, but you need to have both of those lenses.
And guys, if you're doing keyword research, make use of keywords everywhere. And you
For
can
sure.
tell you how you can name your company or your product so that you don't fall victim to that issue. Thank you so much for your time, Eli. Please let the people already know that they can find you on LinkedIn, but maybe you can let us know what you have going on for you, how we can keep up with. Do you have any? Yeah, you mentioned that you're working on a new book that's coming out soon called Customer Intelligence. What else do you have going on that you would like the people to know about?
Just subscribe to my newsletter at product.seo.com, where I go into longer detail on all these topics.
Awesome. And when's the book launching again? The second.
They said September. So it's with Wiley as a publisher. So they run the schedule, but I don't think it'll be September. Follow me on
Keep a
LinkedIn
lookout
and I will announce it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Eli.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.